In this episode, we sit down with Adidas and our agency partner, FP7 McCann, to talk about how we shocked fans at the 2022 FIFA World Cup with a stunning sand art sculpture that brought attention to equality in sport.
Hi, Felix. Why don't you walk us through about kind of how this idea came about and what you wanted to achieve with this idea?
I think to begin with, we started with a blank canvas, which was the opportunity to own a big piece of a massive beach in Qatar, right? I think that's exactly where we started and where we were like, we definitely have to do something with this. What is it? What is it that we're going to do? So obviously the biggest moment you have is football happening in Qatar. And the very first thing that comes to mind is not only football, but football male players, right? But we wanted to kind of make a statement. The opportunity could have been extremely simple. Could have been just, let's put a big logo, let's put in a big product in there and just do something that is just spectacular. But I think the way we ended up integrating all the messaging and including something that people might not expected was even unexpected to ourselves, to be very honest.
Felix, so what was the process involved in designing and creating the beach billboards? Like, how did you come about finding that stretch of beach in particular and sort of what crafted that?
Yeah, to begin with, obviously being one of the main sponsors of the event, we had a lot of contacts. And honestly, we had a lot of branding opportunities here and there. There was buildings, there was stadiums, which some of them we did took on. It was mainly product-based and generic. But then this beach came to notice, and obviously it's not just a beach, but also it had two very key things. One, it was just in front of one of the most iconic stadiums of Qatar and Doha, which was basically highlighted everywhere when you were talking about the World Cup. And then the second one, the possibility that by being in between the two airports, there was a chance for people to actually see it from the sky, right? And even me flying back in between the World Cup, I got a chance to actually prove that it was actually visible from the sky. So I think that was a moment where we said, this is not just a normal media placement. This is not just a normal branding opportunity.
Honestly, when the brief came to us, it was like, amazing, what another cool Adidas brief. And then we were like, ooh, challenging. How do we bring this to life? And I think trying to incorporate the scale of what this needed to be, which we all aligned on from the off, it just needed to be something that was huge and visible and impactful. How do we do that? Because it's not a usual creative piece. We wanted it to have some sort of longevity, so not just be something that was on the sand for a couple of hours and then washed away. And then obviously we're battling things such as the weather in Qatar and the shoreline and the sand and everything else that goes with it. We stumbled across Nathan, who was actually the sand artist that we worked in partnership with. He understood, as strange as it sounds, the complexities of the beach and the sands and everything else in region and how complex they are in terms of the heat and water not retaining inside and stuff. And that was our stepping stone, really, sort of triggering from there.
Listen, I'll be very honest. There was even on our side a lot of uncertainty because it was such a physical activation that it depended a lot of like what it was actually possible on ground, right? This was not, do we have the right line? Do we have the right placing? It was, can the guy do the job? And once we started seeing the first images of what he was doing, honestly, I started sleeping better the next day.
I mean, from our end, I think we're really surprised at how, let's say, delicate sand is, right? So, I mean, just achieving the facial features of the players, I mean, I'm really glad they turned out to look like, the way they did.
Felix, it kind of naturally leads on to the next question, really, in terms of what were the challenges bringing a creative idea of this magnitude to life. I think we've kind of naturally started talking about that. But is there anything else that you can think of along the process that just felt like a huge challenge that we sort of needed to battle through?
I mean, to be honest, the whole idea of quote unquote hijacking the biggest male sporting event in the world to talk about female sports, right? I think everybody was a little bit afraid of not actually achieving it or doing it or getting all the quote unquote permits. But surprisingly and thankfully there was not one person that was not on board of showcasing female sport during the biggest male sport in the world, right? And I think that was, in our minds, that was the biggest challenge. And I think it really goes to show you how much we really believe people are against this when they're not really. It's just about actually starting the conversation and saying, hey, we believe this stage is great to talk about female empowerment.
Why the World Cup? I mean, why use that event, that season, as an opportunity to boost visibility for women in sports? And what was the value in it for your brand?
Of course, there is a value for the brand. That's very obvious. I mean, the name is there. They are Adidas athletes. Adidas as a brand and football has always been together, right? That's one of our strongest pillars. But then on the other side, obviously we're really much into supporting equality in sports. So how are we as a brand enabling this conversation? If you have the biggest moment to talk about something, and if all the world is looking, why don't we bring one of those topics where people are not really talking about, which is females in sport, females in football. And also I believe that at some stage and point, the region is a little bit misunderstood. Obviously, there's a lot of things that are happening here, but the region is moving as fast as they can to reach that equality. And it doesn't mean only, for example, as a very raw example, it doesn't mean reaching the equality only that, let's say, Western countries have, but also even surpassing that. As a very good example, we know Saudi Arabia, it's a topic. But if you look at the women's and the men's team, when it comes to the national team that we just recently sponsored, they have the same salaries, males and females. And from Adidas side, they have the same bonus structure, and this is a unique case anywhere in the world. Like, it's a perfect place to start the conversation, not only because people have the eyes on the region because of the moment of the actual event, but also because of the topic. Like, if you have the opportunity, if we own the chances as a brand, why not give it to the people or to the groups that don't have them?
So, Felix, how do experiential platforms like this deliver for the brand, and why are they so important to Adidas?
Look, I think to begin with, giving the feeling that you're actually doing something and putting so much effort into doing something in a place, like in a physical place, it really tells a lot about the brand. But when you're one of the main sponsors of the event, when you have all the contacts in the world, when you have the budget to do it, and you have a moment in a place where you can prove a point in real life, like people there could see it there, could walk by it. It really proves a point. Like, obviously we wanted to say we're hijacking the moment, but we're not kind of like hijacking it with an image or with a message or anything. We're literally on the ground where everything was happening, right? The beautiful thing about it it wasn't even hijacking at all because people supported the movement, right?
I feel like it was just a breath of fresh air, and it stopped people in their tracks and made them think, because suddenly it was just this like tap into, this is a bigger picture, exactly what we were trying to achieve. And it just felt really different to other activations and other pieces and other things that were just happening in the city.
Yeah, I also think, just part of the whole experience was the way we kind of rolled out the whole idea. Just asking the question of who are the next legends, and then, revealing it to be women. It was kind of this eye-opener sort of moment. And I think it's just the way we all think, and we kind of forget the other half. So I feel like in that sense, just the rollout of the whole thing really made a difference on the impact it had too. So what actions are Adidas taking to ensure women get equal visibility?
We start with giving equal opportunity. And obviously there's very clear actions that we're taking upon, which is one of our programs right now. It's called the 1% for Common Goal, which is essentially every 1% of the sales of our Rihla, which was our ball for the World Cup, which is essentially the best-selling product for the year. That's how it is. Goes to supporting football and girls around places in the world where they need the support and given the opportunities. A lot of brands could bring in Women's Day the topic of women's in sport, and it will be fine, but they do not necessarily have the credibility that a sports brand like Adidas has, right? So I think for us, it's, yes, one is doing those hard, very real tangible efforts like the 1% effort is, but also in campaigns that you will see even across the year, we have a 50-50 representation, right? And obviously, as a third thing is start signing more girls, more athletes, right? Because they are the ones that will rise and become the heroes of the next girl that is playing football. And so I think it's those three things. The first one, like I said, reflecting that the product can be used and it's in campaign with women. The second one, real tangible efforts when it comes to revenue. And the third one is actually creating those heroes that girls will follow.